Hey everybody, welcome back to Pealed Back's LiveCast Conversations with. This is episode 81, and as always, I'm Gene, the co-active coach. And on today's show, we have Corey Lane Hilton. Corey utilizes his experience entertaining clients internationally, spanning 25 years in the male exotic dancing industry. And he's dedicated extensive time researching self-worth. He is a men's mental health advocate. He challenges the stereotypical definition of man enough by focusing on mental health, spirituality, authenticity, and personal growth. Through his work, he provides an unscripted, unapologetic viewpoint, motivating men to overcome embedded subconscious blocks, and he provides his audience with a realistic view of what it's like being on the other side of the velvet rope. Corey, thank you so much for being on the show, and those words do not do you enough justice.
Thanks, Gene. I appreciate you having me on, man. I've actually watched a couple of your episodes and really enjoyed the vibe of it. So that's why I approached you. I really wanted the opportunity to really kind of show you a little bit about what my story is all about, where I'm at now, and where I'm planning on going with the future. So no, that was a great intro, and I appreciate it in a big way. So thanks again.
Oh yeah, and like you said, you approached me after watching the episode with Candace and Mike. There's a connection there. So a friend of Mike's is a friend of mine and a friend of the show. So we're already buddies now. So big shout out to Mike and being on here is man, what a set of stories you've got. When we talk about bumps and triumphs, be like, you've got it all and then some.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I want to say I really appreciate the connection through Mike and Candy as well. Mike and Candy are both just gems. They're in my flat tire 5, I call it, as far as those type of people that I hold close to me that are, the type of people that I guess you could say if you had a flat tire in the middle of nowhere at 3:00 in the morning, call them up. They're the type that would be there, and there's no other expectations. They just want to be good people and be your friends. Yeah. So that's important to me as somebody that had a lot of acquaintances in my past, and friendships are very important. So no, I really appreciate the connection. And stories, I have a whole lot of them, without a doubt, being in the industry that I was in, of course. But stories are just stories. It is also something that I kind of came to realize those stories actually held a lot of value that I didn't even realize until this last couple of years. I think sometimes we tend to, no matter what we're in, we tend to use the word just in front of us a little bit too much and say, oh, I just did that. And not realizing that, maybe your past actually and some of the things that you went through can really help out somebody in this world. And, not saying that I have all the answers for everybody, but I definitely have the answers for a few. And I hope to have the opportunity to be able to help out people that are willing to go there. And that's like anything. You have to be willing to go there. So, yeah.
Oh, I like so many good things right off the top. Like the jest component to the conversation. It's just like, that does show up a lot, right? Like you can justify what you've gone through, be like, well, I've gone through it, right? Like no one else is going to experience anything like this. Be like, they are. It's incredible what happens with that value of that story and how you can take those stories and own it too. Like I imagine there's a component of like going through it and viewing it now from having been experienced it and now looking back on it with everything else you've learned is like new perspectives and new gems that can come up from that.
Yeah, liberating is the word that I have to say. It's actually something that it's a powerful word, but at the same time, it is the only one that really makes sense to me. Being aware of these things is so important. And I think when you get to a certain age, you kind of come to realize that some of those things, those pitfalls that you went through, you have to be grateful for them because there's something right behind those that are really massive learning experiences that if you're not aware of them, then you're just going to continue to trip and fall over them over and over and over again because you're blocking it. You're not really realizing that, this is something that you have to connect the dots on to understand. And so, I have very relatable struggles like any other guy really that goes through divorce or goes through addictions of whatever it might be. It's not like I put myself on any pedestal. I'm just using my platform that I was on before to really just show this all through a different lens. And I kind of believe that the people that are in the personal development realm, like as many people are really in it, especially now with the, with social media being as big as it is, they tend to regurgitate the same information a lot. And there's only so many things you can really talk about when it comes to, self-help. Everybody has kind of a similar message, but I just went at it from a little different angle. And so, I guess I don't want to sound creepy saying this. It sounds almost bad, especially based off my branding. But I kind of go of the mentality of I'll show you mine if you show me yours. And what I mean by that is I took this book right here, and I actually showed you or showed the world everything in that book. And what I mean by that is I showed the world my stories of taking it off, as far as taking my clothes off, and all the stories that everybody wanted me to put on paper. I went ahead and gave people that for the entertainment side of it. Now, on the other side of it, though, I really wanted to give more as far as the personal development side of it. So after the book was written, I wanted to inject my core values into that, and the feelings that and the struggles that they represented. So
Right.
what I mean is that I have a set of core values. You have a different set of core values. Everybody has a different one. But more importantly, actually, there's a different set of feelings that come with each one of those core values that everybody's different with that. And when you're not aware of it, in a weird kind of way, you're going through life as a slot machine. You're just pulling it and, oh, I get this. But when you actually have the awareness of these things, and more importantly, the awareness of the opposite feeling of your core values, that is the most important thing. Because when you're actually hitting that, now you're really getting to the root of what's kind of going on when you're actually having your emotions take over instead of your actual rational mind. So I can go into all that, but that is
so
actually
many
a lot to do
things,
with my
so
stuff.
many
There's a lot
gems
to
are already
unwrap there.
being distributed here, man. Like I love the slot machine reference, and you know, you talked early, like before at the start here, is like how you start to connect the dots, and I think a
Yeah,
big
man.
part of that is like that, you know, going through this process of discovering who it is to be you, be like what's on that good side, and you say what's on the other side of that core value, right? Because like
Mm-hmm.
the one side of this, or two different sides of the same coin, is like they're always going to have a reverse, and like learning about that
Yep.
and tying the feeling to that
Yep.
core value. I think
Massive.
that is a huge component to it, so you can recognize when it's coming up, going,
Mm-hmm.
oh, what's this? Oh, this core value set is being engaged, being triggered right now, right? Like
Yep.
where did you come up, like,
Mm.
it's a broad thing, but like where did you come up with
No.
the concept of tying that feeling to
Mm-hmm.
the core value set?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, actually, because I want to make that really clear. I work for one of the most amazing publishing companies on this planet called Daring to Share Global, and my mentor slash coach slash editor, Miss Diana Ryers, is actually out in Kingston, Ontario. And really, I'll be straight up, Gene. When I first started this whole process of writing my book, I knew nothing. I knew nothing of any of this stuff. I was just,
Yeah.
hey, I was just a guy that had a whole lot of great stories, and I was putting them on paper because everybody asked me to put them on paper because they were so
Yeah.
crazy. So that's where it started. But then when I actually was finished the book and I was ready to get her, to really start getting real about this, then I was like, okay, it's not enough, because all it is stories. It's not, it has to have more that the reader can take with them. So for me, when I met up with this amazing company and I got to know these people, they really started to inject my own personal authenticity into this. And so I kind of started to gather the struggles in each chapter that I had written, and they were all based off of my key set of core values. And so there was like basically 10 that I actually had to put down on paper. And all I really simply did was I had all these different value words, and I just picked out the ones that resonated with me the most, and I drew it
Yeah.
down to 8 to 10 of them. And then from there, really what I did was I said, okay, what feeling do I get, for example, when I'm in creativity mode? Creativity is one of my core values. So what do I feel when I'm in creativity mode? Well, I feel excitement. I feel accomplishment, right? That's sort of like,
Yeah.
that's what gets me, right? So then this is the interesting part. I actually kind of found out that I was able to use these to connect those dots from my past. And this is where my actual story even somewhat got altered a little bit, because then I started using my thumb instead of using the finger of blame and pointing it at everybody else. So here's a good example of that. I had a pretty heavy divorce, probably not with kids or maybe necessarily any type of mental or physical abuse in any way. I'm just talking about a heavy divorce on the heart.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is that it was kind of it was forced to a certain degree, but there was a degradation that happened long before we were actually eventually ended. And what I mean by that is that I was actually, even as a male dancer, and people can believe me or not, but as a male dancer, even when I was married, I was 100% monogamous. And I mean 100%. Even though the guys I was working with were running around and doing whatever they wanted with whoever, I was the
Yeah.
guy that was probably, most of the time, I was the guy back at the hotel room counting my money and calling my ex-wife and telling her we're going to go to Victoria's Secret when I get home. So I
Yeah.
was that guy. And so, but that was when I was in my creative mode. That's when I was on stage and loving what I was doing. But then there was a portion of my marriage where I actually got out of the dance industry for a while. And believe it or not, I actually became a ceramic tile and stonemason. That's a pretty heavy difference. Not
That's
exactly the same type of business. I was really good at it, but it was not my passion. So
Right.
that changed me. It actually took away this element of creativity that I had, which in turn took away my feeling of excitement that I had in my life. So that exciting, charismatic guy that she married died. And so I didn't even realize that that guy died. That guy was kind of gone. And I was just kind of sitting here going, oh, well, I'm married and she married a friggin' male exotic dancer. And I was up on billboards and there's no way she's ever going to stray from me. You know, I'm in comfort zone. There's, you know, everything's going to be fine. Well, when you don't connect with these things and you're not aware of your partner's values and core feeling or the feelings and values, and you're not really working on it, you're on the slot machine of marriage now. And that slot machine didn't pay off every time. In fact, in the end, it didn't pay off at all. Yeah. Right? So what ended up happening was she was the one that ended up straying. So the irony of the whole thing is this. For 15 years after I was divorced, I sat there and pointed the finger at her and said, how dare you? I was even wishing rainstorms to go over her house. I'd see it on the Weather Channel and over in New York it would be raining and I'd be just like, yeah, keep raining. I just was just really jaded and really not carrying a lot of negativity, right? And so I actually held on to this negativity for so long, pointing blame at her, that I actually put a shadow of guilt over top of her. And the crazy thing is that I was actually, that forgiveness that I was not able to give, it was all damaging me, even though she was a bazillion miles away. Yeah. So when I finally faced up to this and realized that connecting that dot of my creativity was the demise, then I can go back to her. This was just a couple of years ago. I went back to her and said, hey, I want you to help me out. I want you to give me your perspective on some of these hard times that we went through. I want to know what it was like in your head so I can inject somebody else's perspective into my book than just mine. I want your feedback. And also I want to actually let you also know that I've connected the dots and realized that I was at the very least 50% accountable for our marriage's demise in the first place. You might have took the action, but I pushed you there. Yeah. And by doing that, she was able to find her authenticity and actually release herself of that prison in her mind, and so was I. So even the worst of the worst, even the relationships that you think can never be healed, they can be healed if you work on it. It's only under your control. You can't expect anybody else to do it. You got to be willing to do it yourself. But the word liberating always comes back over and over and over again for me. And that's where I'm liberated now, where I don't think about that stuff anymore. And that one layer of taking it off, that's a big one. And it's a lifelong lesson, right? So, you know, you can keep following the same patterns or change it up. That's all I can say.
And I think you alluded to this at the beginning. It's like you either learn from it or the lesson keeps approaching you and kind of cranking the heat up every time it's there until it gets your bloody attention, right? Be like, you're either going to learn or you're going to keep getting punched in the face. It's your choice, right? So whatever it is that you like. And eventually you're like, that one hit a little hard. What's actually going on? And to be able to release all of that, like you said, you know, like take that 50% is like what I view and what I hear from you is like you owned 100% of you, right? And because you brought yourself however you showed up at that time, you were still you look back at that going, oh, I get what happened to me and how this slow process of doing something that you're really good at but wasn't fulfilling at all, right? And how that took it away. And I'm assuming there wasn't another spot in the life to bring that creativity and that excitement to deploy that.
Yeah, in fact, it's only been up till this last couple of years where I found the creativity and excitement again since I actually completely got out of the industry at the age of 43. Now, again, though, like I say, even though I did that, I still hadn't learned my lesson yet. I was still not working on my inner self at that point. I was still working on my outer self, being the guy that's like going, oh, I'm going to get myself back after I got out of a marriage. I need to get good old Corey back, 30-year-old Corey back, right? So I went right for the first thing that made sense. Go to my exterior, build my body back up, make myself look really good so everybody around me is going to accept me. The only problem was the person that really meant, the most important person that needed to accept me was me. And I couldn't get there yet. So it took doing that inner work to be able to accept me and be kind to myself and be compassionate enough in that situation. And it took detachment, Gene. It actually took
Yeah.
like getting away from my relationships, my career, everything. I took literally 2 years off of my life to do this journey of self-discovery. And if I had done this maybe 10 years ago, maybe I would have avoided the 8-year Forrest Gump walk that I had after my divorce, trying to figure out what the hell was going on with my life, right?
Yeah.
So it's just connecting those dots again. And, you know, but at the same time, it's very individual, and I'm not here to say that, you know, there's a lot of people that need therapy for big T traumas that are out of my realm. But at the same time, when it comes to experience and being somebody that's walked the walk of these things, such as emotional disconnect in such a big way for most of my life, and like I said, divorce, and obviously even drug and sex addiction at one point. You know, it's just, I guess all I can say is when I can actually help somebody through my facilitations for my clients and then have them cross-reference with my book. What's really cool about that process is I can go through a training and then just say, hey, John, you know, read chapter 1 of my book where I had the struggle between my perspective and truth, and go back to a time in your life that maybe you had a struggle with your core values, maybe even as far back as 5 years old, when I wasn't even aware of what authenticity was, and just didn't even intentionally be inauthentic, but I was. Right. So you can actually find those things. And when you actually connect those things, it just gives you that why you're looking for. Really does. And so that's been my process. And that's why I'm really enjoying doing this whole thing, because now it's not just about a book. It's really impacting people, again, that are willing, but you have to be willing. It's a big one. It's tough.
Yeah. So a couple questions that come up from all this is like, the first one is, was there a breaking point when you're like, holy crap, I need to, you know, you used the Forrest Gump reference, and you're out there walking for 8 years, and eventually, for those of us who are old enough to watch the movie, at some point he's just like, I'm done, I'm going home. Like, what was that I'm done, I'm going home moment for you?
Oh God, that's such a good question. Okay, first off, I always laugh about it because I always call, if I was to break my life down to 3 movies, I always say it's Joe Dirt, Forrest Gump, and Magic Mike. You throw all 3 of them together, you pretty much got my life. But the real trigger, honestly, the turning point, it wasn't just any one day. What it actually came down to was I was adopted by my grandparents. My grandparents were the best people. They only had the tools that they had, just like every parent does out there, right? You only know what you know. And they passed on such good stuff, morality, integrity, so many good qualities to me, but they also passed down some bad ones that, you know, due to their own lives, right? It's just the way it is. Maybe it's words, maybe it's actions, or maybe it's not actions. And by actually having that happen, I wrote this book, and they were still alive at that point. And my grandfather, my father, he passed away a couple of years ago at 97. Grandmother passed away a few years before that. And I just honestly didn't want them to hear about or read any of the stories in there, like the entertainment side of the book, because there's some stuff in there that, although they were very cool with letting me do what I wanted to do, I didn't want the image of the kid that they raised to be tarnished. It was just meant something to me. I didn't want that. So I held off and waited. And when my father passed away, unfortunately, he passed away when I was actually in Indonesia a couple of years ago, just before COVID had really set in heavy. And you know, I realized at that point that was the needle mover. That was the point where I was like, okay, now I'm going to go ahead and it's all rope, and now I'm going to make it something really special. And that kind of it just flowed, and it just happened. And then all of a sudden I put this book out, it hits Amazon bestseller list. It's, you know, and the reviews are awesome. And I'm just kind of like, anybody that takes the time to read it's coming back to me and saying that gave me such a, you know, a different perspective. I have to tell my husband about this, you know, whatever it is. And it's just really cool it's not to feed the ego really as much as it is to get the feedback, because to me, an authentic leader is somebody that's open to accepting not only the good feedback, but the bad feedback, to understand what they're seeing through their lens, whether that's about you personally or your project that you're doing. So yeah, you know, now that I'm in that zone, my self-worth, my confidence is boosting up a little bit more. But you know, honestly, just being real, like the inner critic always comes up for me, and it always will be there, and it's there for everyone. It's just a matter of how you deal with the inner critic, because not everybody wakes up feeling that they're going to go rocket every day. It's just that's not life.
No, and there's a book I've read numerous times called The Prosperous Coach, and in it he's got a little component about comparing like people that do what we do for a living, is like impacting lives, coaching, consulting. It's like there's always this story about, oh, I'm not feeling it today, and he's like, do you think the person working behind the well, what is it, where they do the driver's license, do you think they were feeling like it
the motor
today?
vehicle branch.
What about the trucker that had to get into his truck every day? Do you think he was always feeling it? No.
Nope.
Like, have this concept of being like this blue collar worker where you be like, just because you don't feel it, be like, you still got to go do it, right? And you got to put the work in. And where I'm trying to circle back with this is talking about the inner critic, the saboteur, whatever anybody wants to call it, is like,
the same one and the same,
right? Like it's still that little voice that's going, hey, you think you can do this? Be like, yeah, I do. And like, have you redefined your relationship with that inner critic of yours?
Have I ever? Me and my inner critic have a good relationship now, although we don't get along that well. We get it. We make it work. No, I jokingly say this. Actually, there's a writer by the name of Kyle Cease, who's a former comedian. I read his book, The Illusion of Money, and he said this in it. It was kind of funny. It's like, when you have negative self-talk and you're like, you don't even realize you're doing it, but you maybe drop a spoon on the floor and you're like, oh God, Corey. And you give yourself a hard time over it, right? Well, now I learned to laugh about it and just whatever. Yeah. But it's funny, when I would do that negative self-talk, I didn't realize that a lot of the time that when I was doing that, I was even projecting that off on other people in my environment. So I needed to be aware of that, because I owe them more than just to be doing that to myself. I have to be kind to myself to be able to be kind to other people in my life. And I didn't really clue into that, right? Like, that was just one of those things I was just kind of a little bit blinded by. But at the same time, what Kyle actually says in his book, which I really enjoyed, was he's kind of like, for me, here's a good example. Like, I still struggle with a feeling of lack sometimes, not being enough, maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome at times, maybe even disconnection emotionally, not intentionally, just low confidence, believe it or not. Even in this position as what I even did, I still have my confidence issues. And it's kind of funny. He just says, you just have to say, I've struggled with lack all my life, and I love that. And just end it at that. Just be like, I love it. It's part of me. It's part of me. There's nothing I can do about it. It's good to be aware of it. And the crazy thing is when I kind of did that, then I was like, okay, how is this affecting my life? And so as a good example, again, on this trip I was on a couple of years ago, I was in Boracay in the Philippines. Beautiful beach, probably the most beautiful beach in the world. I've never seen anything quite like it. And I had a pretty good amount of money in my bank account, not struggling by any means. I'm over here, having a good time. And I'm walking down the beach, and all I could think about was the what ifs and the what am I going to do if this happens? And yes, I'm financially stable right now, but what's going to happen in a couple of years if the world falls apart? And I just had all the what ifs running through my head. So realistically, what was lack doing to me in that moment? I was walking down the most beautiful beach in the world, and I was in a freaking prison cell, Gene. I was in a prison cell.
Away from the present.
Right? So it's like, what are we doing all this for? That's what I kind of asked myself after that. Like, what are we going through life? Like, putting ourselves in this prison cell in our heads. We got to just, and for me, I'm not here to talk from anybody else, because I don't know what people have, go through their minds. But for me, that was a massive struggle. So now my mission actually is just to grow my value as much as I possibly can. And I'm dead set on doing this. And I'm not just talking about like status or worth. I'm talking about value, providing value to the world. Yeah. Kind of similar to, like, as an example, if you took every dollar away from Oprah Winfrey tomorrow, by next week she could have it all back, because she just has that much value that she's given to the world, right? I can't say that yet, right? But maybe there's going to be a time in my life where I will be able to say that. And that's the only way that I can ever truly destroy lack and get it completely out of my head. So that's just my perspective. And this is what I just came to realize about myself, because my issue is lack, right? So, but where did that come from? It came from my family background, yes, because they were Depression era and they had a lot of hardship. But realistically, I can point the finger at them all day long, but it's me who controls what's going on between those ears, right? So you got to protect your house. Man. Protect your house, man. It's not about the house that you're protecting with your dog. I'm talking about the house between your ears, right? Because limiting beliefs can come up and jump on any of us.
Well, yeah, and just to pile on that is like my saboteur is like he's a mix between Heath Ledger's Joker and
Oh.
Beetlejuice, like just a troublemaker, right? But like what I've realized with it is like when they show up, it's like it's it's almost like they're that unemotional father, right? Like they're giving like busting your chops, saying you can't do this because they think that's what you need to overcome them to be
Mm,
better than what they you see yourself. Like without the grind, without the hustle, how are you going to ever accomplish it? And like seeing it from that different perspective, and likewise with you, is like how can you hear what they're saying differently, right? Because we all have a chorus of voices that are going off in our head, and some of them are helpful and some of them are just downright disastrous, right? And
mhm.
it's just messaging. It's
Yeah,
your choice to take that messaging and bring it into the world through your words and through your actions. So it's always curious to see how people are addressing that, and there is some like underlying like commonalities of like getting to a point where you're like, is that what you're really saying? Is this what I
yeah,
really want to be doing? And then like having that like oh shit in the mirror moment.
yeah, and like I say, man, like bring it back to what we opened up with, right? You have to be willing. And so, like
Yeah.
again, what I'm saying is that when you're literally when you're doing this process, is you're deprogramming old automated patterns that you've had that have
Yeah.
been put into your head from day freaking one. And I'm
Yeah.
talking way back, right? So,
Oh yeah.
so it's hard, especially for somebody like me, where I was like in this perfectionism game and comparison game from 17 years old,
Yeah.
right? So like, I mean, and I'm not, you haven't even got into the good stuff yet, but I'm just saying, like, here I was at 17 years old in high school, a kid that was kind of getting bullied, and I was felt in my own head I was totally mediocre, whereas a lot of other people didn't feel that. But of course, my perspective was you're just mediocre.
Yeah.
So that was sort of like, and I was not wanting to be bullied anymore, so I did what I could control and built my body up and got myself in really good shape and all that good stuff. And then from there, working in the clubs for a bit, and then going into being a trying to be a pro bodybuilder. And I went through my bout with even steroids at one point, and trying to compete. So once again, here we are sculpting the human body, comparing ourselves to the guy that's standing right next to us in a freak to
Yeah.
be a freak mentality. And then for till I was 43, I was in a comparison game on stage. Right, the better you're looking you are, the better you present yourself, the better show you have, the more money you're making. It's all competition.
Yeah.
So when you're programmed with that much automated patterns in your head, it's a tough one to deprogram that, right?
Yeah.
Because that's not easy. That's why I literally had to take 2 years off to strip those layers out, really. And
Yeah.
I even refer to it like it's an all-encompassing thing, my friend. So it's like, as a former bodybuilder, what did I do? I went in the gym, I worked out, I ended up, having muscle and joint pains for so long. And then I had to actually reprogram that and go into yoga and actually start to like rip off those layers of pain that I was holding inside of me, that I was
Yeah.
blocking with my pain tolerance. Just like blocking mental stuff, it's the
Yeah.
same bloody thing. I was blocking it and pretending that it really wasn't there because I'd built up a tolerance to it and just accepting it for what it was. I wanted more out of life. I wanted to have that higher state of consciousness, man. And when I look at it, that's the reason. That is literally the reason why I had so many bloody relationship struggles for most of my adult life, because I could never actually look people in the eye. I was always looking up at them from my pedestal, or looking up at them on their pedestal, or looking down at them from mine. I was never looking them in the eye, and I had way too
Yeah.
high of expectations on both sides of the coin. Nobody
Wow.
stood a chance.
It's
Just being real.
like yeah, I applaud you for the experience of going through it, and where you've talked a lot about this is like there's been like this underpinning of like wealth, right? I'll even drop the self worth component to it. It's like, but like it's almost like you've changed what worth and wealth mean to you, instead of having to base that wealth or worth on like who's standing across from you. It's like
Mhm.
what's happening within here. If I can bring more of this out, I'm going to be that more wealthier. I'm going to have my own worth to the world because I'm delivering from the heart. And it's just like getting right back to it. And, part of that, the stories that we program into ourselves. I
Yep.
call it the subconscious. Like it's like a massive supercomputer is what it is. And it's
Yep.
just listening for input, going, oh, is this what we like? Is this what we like? Cool. What if I act
Yep.
this way? Oh, okay. Now that reinforces it. Years and years and years. And like, most of our crap comes from like when we were like 5 to 10, Like these are like
Oh,
some formative years, and then all of a sudden, here we are in our 40s going, why is the little kid still in charge? What the fuck's happening here?
dude, then stack on top of that, born before social media showed up, and now I'm in my later half of my life in social media land with everybody airbrushing themselves, trying to present themselves as something that they're not, being completely
Yeah.
and totally inauthentic and selling themselves.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
And yeah, like I run a business. Yeah, I go on social media and I do 3 posts a day because I have to do that. That's part of the package. But you know what? When I'm doing that, I'm not selling myself as something that I want. If I get 10 likes, I get 1 like, I get no likes,
Yeah.
whatever. It doesn't matter. It's not about how many likes you get. It's how you actually love who you are. It doesn't
There
matter
it
about
is.
the likes on the other end. That
Yeah.
makes no difference at all. So like if I, and I know I've said this a million times, and it's talks cheap, actions are louder than words,
Yeah.
totally. But you know, if you can't love yourself, you can't love someone else. There's an element of that
Yeah.
that is most definitely true. But to love yourself, you, in my eyes anyways, you have to connect those dots. It's like,
Yeah.
and again, like I'm only talking from my perspective, but like if I asked you about love languages, for example, and you talked about your partner and you were like, okay, you know, my partner, the way she wants love expressed to her is through gifts, as an example.
Yeah.
And maybe my partner, on the other hand, might be liking the expression of love as she doesn't care about gifts. She just wants a kiss on the neck randomly every once in a while when you come in the room. That's love to
Yeah.
her. Everybody has a different love language. Well, it's kind of like that with values too, believe it or not. And so to me, this is again, I'm just going to dive in a little bit on this authenticity trip again. But what it comes down to is as I said, I have those core values. Yes, I have those feelings. How can I actually take those every day and make sure that they're all aligned? It's almost
Mm.
impossible. Like that's
Yeah.
not, you can't do it. That's perfection. It doesn't work that way,
Yeah.
right? So what my company did is they actually said, okay, instead of trying to be all that, it's a far better thing to actually take all those 8 feelings that you have and condense it down into one called the inner purpose feeling. Now I'm getting into the systematic stuff here.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying
Do
is,
it.
okay, so I'm just going to run it off. My core values, I'll give you my top 8. My top 8 are truth, integrity, unity, protection, relationships, creativity, leadership, and detachment. Those are mine, okay? Now, the actual feelings that come into play with that: truth is reality, integrity is confidence, unity is ease, protection is safety, relationships is connection, creativity is excitement, leadership is satisfaction, and detachment is empathy. So if I take all those feelings and I create it into an inner purpose feeling, it is for me harmony. So if those are all in line, I'm feeling harmonious. Now, if I'm on the other end of harmony, what is that? That is dissonance.
Yeah.
Friggin' don't want to be there. If I am in any, if I'm on anywhere near that, I am way
Yeah.
out of line. So when I'm safe, for example, on a day where I'm feeling disconnected, I wake up for some reason, I'm just not feeling like I even want to be social today. I don't even want to get on social media. Hell, I'm even having a hard time just taking my dog for a walk. I'm so bloody disconnected. This is where I can connect the dots, because now I can go, okay, connection is my feeling with relationships. I'm disconnected. Which relationship is the issue? Is it my mom? Is it my girlfriend? Is it my boss? Is it my dog? What is it
Right.
that's pissing me off and making me disconnected? And usually, if I can figure that out and get that needle in the haystack, I can go and address it. And after I address it, I'm not feeling disconnected anymore.
Yeah.
So that's just my way of systematically approaching it. But again, we're all snowflakes with that one, man. So everybody has a different set of feelings with that.
Yeah.
So that's where we're all so individual. So is one answer right for everyone? No. And that's why I've dove into this as a career, because I really enjoy getting people to be vulnerable, getting them to
Yeah.
open up and say, hey, these are the feelings that I have that are attached to this. And then they can recognize that as well and be aware. Because when you're
Right.
aware, man,
Oh.
it makes such a massive difference. When you're unaware, slot machine, again,
Well,
you know.
it's running on that autopilot, right? Like letting this
Yep.
brute computer do it all. And when you bring that awareness, it's just like you get this like flash of going again. It's just like that in the mirror moment. Everything gets a little bit brighter, and
Yeah, man.
sometimes even a little bit more slowed down. You're like, am I the drama? Is it me? Be like, oh, it is. Like, and because
Yeah.
you can deal with it from there, right? Like, I think that
Yeah.
self-awareness when you talk about the slot machine and everything else, it's just like that's those fingers pointing out without what's the old adage? Then you got 3 more fingers pointing right back in. start to take account for the fingers that are pointing in, and what role,
Yeah.
how can you take that 100% accountability for the game that you're playing,
Yeah,
right?
man. It's
Right?
just
Like it's your board, so you choose the things that are on there and how you deal with it. It
it's all part
like
of
how,
it's
yeah,
all growth. It's all growth. And some of us will go to our dying day, my friend, never realizing that and playing the slot machine till they're 97
yeah,
years old themselves. Hate to say it, even my dad did it.
yeah,
He did. He went there all the way. And, I love me some Trent Shelton. Trent Shelton's one of my favorite speakers out there. The reason why, he's unscripted. He tells it just like it freaking is. The one thing I always say, and I always bring this up in podcasts, I just love this tagline, is just simply that people focus so much on their bloody birthdays, right? And I mean, I'm getting older. I'm not old yet, but I'm getting older. And the thing is he always says, why aren't you focusing on your death day? Because there's way too many people around this planet that are walking around right now. They're still here, but they're dead,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so, like, are you really living your life? Are you really getting down there and actually finding that higher state of consciousness? Because
yeah.
to me, life's about building great relationships and creating kick-ass memories. And for me, I want to drain that gas tank right out, man. I want to be at that level. When I'm gone, I want to be like, all right, yeah, you spent the first half of your life as a male stripper running around as a free bird and having a damn good time, and you have no regrets doing that. The second half, now you're going to make the impact. Now you're
Yeah.
going to do something that's going to leave the legacy,
Oh,
right?
man.
So that's where I'm at now, right? I want to drain it right on out,
Love
man.
it.
So
I
yeah.
used to say, when I die, I want to like slide into heaven, hair all askew, going, "Whoa, that was a hell of a ride." Now I'm less hair, but like it's
Oh
still
no, in
like,
heaven you'll have hair. You'll have hair. In heaven.
it'll be a flowing mane
Yeah,
again,
you'll have
right?
mullet, whatever you want, man. Go for it.
Joe Dirt it
Go
all the
dirty.
way.
Yeah.
But but like, why not? Like, why not? Like,
Yeah.
what do we have to lose, except for like, I look at it as like it's almost like if we don't, we're pissing life away. We're pissing away this great opportunity.
Well, and also
Why?
you have an example to lead, especially if you have kids and you have a family. You owe that to the people around you. Live to the best version of yourself you can live, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I this is where I like come back to a lot of the time for men in particular, right? Like men just tend to put a lot of layers on ourselves. We tend to do this where we can't express emotion. That's not man enough. We can't. We got to be the hunter gatherer. If we're not the hunter gatherer, that's not man enough. We got to make sure that everything's fixed. If not, it's not man enough, right? And you can't cry. That's taboo. We watch Top Gun one too many times. Can't do that. It's not man enough, right? It's all a bunch of bull. It's just such crap, And so where I've kind of combined, and I guess you could say fell in love with bringing the masculine and the feminine a bit together is that with accepting the fact that I needed to get out emotions about certain things in my life. It's not talking about when I spilled a broken egg or something like that. I'm not going to break down in tears. What I'm saying is that when there's heavy stuff happening, when it's really heavy and you're holding all that in, it's a lot better to actually like let it out instead of maybe jumping somewhere, right? Like I'm just saying, there's a reason why 3 or 4 suicides right now in Canada are men. It's just you can't take away from the stats. It's there.
No.
And so one of my taglines in my last chapter of my book, in the Revelations chapter, the very last one was let the dam break before you dam break, man. Like let it happen. Because I mean, what it is this, Gene, is another part of one little section of what I train people on. It's called the arc of intense energy. And all it simply is like you've felt this before. Everybody has. You got the feeling in your lower gut. You're triggered. Maybe it's the hair on the back of your neck, or maybe it's the flushing of the skin. It's a physical response that you get. Maybe you got cut off and you're road raging on somebody right now because you're so upset about the fact that they cut you off. But was it really them? No, it's not the stranger in the car next to you. It's something else, right?
Yeah.
So what it kind of comes down to is when you're having that actual physical feeling, you're on what we call the arc. And then you continue to bottle it up, and you don't hold the emotions back, or you don't let go of the emotions. You continue to go up and up and up, and then all of a sudden something very inauthentic and very bad usually comes blurting out of that mouth that you're going to end up regretting in the end. So it's better to breathe, take the step back, go out into nature, reset, get your head right, figure out where it's at, and then come back to that moment and address it with a rational mindset instead of an emotional mindset. And that's where the synchronization of emotional intelligence and authenticity come together. That's where you've got to have that to be able to actually be your true authentic self. And that's why the stock market bounces up and down and all around all over the place, right? Because people are irrational and emotional and going, oh, I got to sell right now because this is happening, when you're not really thinking, right? So it comes down to that personal side as well, right? So
there's reaction or there's creation, and you can't have both at the same time, but you get to have a pick.
We're in control. You got to realize that you're in control. So I can honestly go on for days about this on this subject because I really enjoy it, but when it comes down to it, like I say, I mean, it's something that when I think about my stories from the past and stuff, it's it's just insane when I look at when you're talking to somebody that, like I said, spent so long in an industry that, quite frankly, like a lot of people, so many people said to me, Corey, what was it like? Like, even men, women, whatever, what was it like? And they don't want to go do it. They never wanted to go do it. They just want to know what it was like, right? So I was like, okay, I'll tell you what it's like. You want to know the truth? Like, not the Magic Mike stuff, but you want to know the truth, like the real stuff that happened? Well, sit down and hold on and put a seatbelt on, because you're about to hear some stuff that you might not have heard before, right? So, and it's not all, like I say, there was some really amazing times, but there was a lot of stuff there that really, like I say, man, like, I'm lucky to be alive. Let's just put it that way. In a couple of instances, I'm really lucky to be alive. And quite frankly, if it wasn't for the words of my grandfather, who was halfway across the world when these things happened, I might not be here right now. So I got to give him credit. He'll never know. He'll never know. He died with it. But, at the same time, it shows that those words can be incredibly impactful on a kid and stick when you're at your rock bottom, when you're your hardest moment. Man, that can be to your benefit. But also on the other side of it, my friend, those words can also, from the negative, the wrong words can stick with you as well. And my grandmother, somebody that I loved with all my heart. Now, we fought like cats and dogs when I was a teenager, but I'm saying, like, I love that woman with all my heart, still do. But she told me from a very early age, at about 8 years old, she said, Corey, you're a follower, you're not a leader. And she point blank said that to me, and I remember exactly where she was standing, the look on her face and everything when she said it. And those words impacted and held me back from pushing towards being a leader for most of my life. Literally, like, I could lead my own shit, but I could never go and I got offered management positions with companies. No, it's okay. I'll settle for the sales role. I'll stay here. It's not for me. I'm good with being in my comfort zone. And so I wouldn't push myself, right? And now I don't. Now I'm on the other end of the scale. Like, I've actually removed that block, because again, through my own self-discovery, I actually worked with my mentor, and she asked me this very simple question. She said, Corey, what's your definition of an authentic leader? And I said, okay, well, I think somebody that actually gently guides somebody in the right direction without telling them what to do. And that person also leads by example and will not ask anybody to walk through the fire unless they're willing to do it themselves. That's an authentic leader. And she turned around and she said to me, okay, that's a good definition. And then she said, I want you to take some homework home with you tonight. And I want you to really think about this. Ask yourself when your grandfather was an authentic leader and when your grandmother was an authentic leader. And I did. And my grandfather he was at work. He was an amazing guy. He built bridges. He did all sorts of great stuff. And he was a very good leader at work. But at home, he came home, opened up his newspaper, sat in front of the TV, kind of just was being dad after work, not really, And my grandmother was she, as much as I loved her and not taking anything away from being a housewife, it's more work than a lot of jobs are, but she was pretty much default in that role. So she was honestly, Gene, I mean this without I'm not slagging her by any means. She's passed away. I don't feel this way at all. But what I'm getting, my point is that when I had to address that and figure out when she was truly being a leader, I couldn't give an answer.
Right.
And that told me something, that when she was saying those words to me, she wasn't speaking to me. She was actually speaking about herself. So when I figured that out, that block went by. Yeah. And as soon as that happened, then it was like, okay, man, you've been holding yourself back, right? And so, and I'll even drop one more on you like this, and I can go on for days on this subject. It's just crazy. So my first chapter in my book, I write about, it's called Goodbye Caterpillar, Hello Butterfly. And my struggle was perspective and truth. So the truth was my core value. The struggle was my perspective of it. So I'm 5 years old. My aunt and my uncle, they take me to the fair. They put me on the Ferris wheel. I'm on there by myself. I get stuck at the top of the bloody Ferris wheel. It's windy. The thing's creaking back and forth. I'm crying my freaking eyes out. I'm losing it. I'm like little T traumatized on this whole thing, blah, blah, blah. And I'm fearful of heights for most of my life over this traumatic incident that happened to me when I was 5. Years later, I go back to my aunt and I said, Aunt Carol, I was like, can you please tell me, like, why in the heck would you ever put this, kid that young on a Ferris wheel by himself to leave him stranded at the top like that? That's pretty cruel. And she just started laughing at me, and I was just kind of disturbed, going, what? And she said, Corey, we weren't at the fair. We were at the mall. I plugged a quarter in the bloody thing. You were stuck at the top. It was maybe 7 feet tall. You were just whining and crying up there, just losing it. It was not at the fair. And I'm like, oh my God. So I figured this out later in life, and I'm like, great. So I didn't do the skydive. I didn't do the parasail. I didn't jump off that cliff. I didn't do all this shit because I was thinking about the quarters, the Ferris wheel at the friggin' mall.
Perspective of a kid, eh?
Yeah. Right? But I come back to this. Have you ever gone back to your original elementary school? Or as an adult, have you even walked into an elementary school before?
Yeah. It's all so small.
Right? Yeah. The ceiling's lower. The desks are smaller. Even the halls are probably more compressed. Everything's smaller. Even the stairs are smaller, right?
Yeah.
So what's the opposite of that? You're a kid. You're looking at the adult thing. Everything's bigger. So to me, in that moment, I was seeing everything as bigger than it actually was. So I have to look back and go, don't be hard on yourself, man. It happened. At least you know now. Move on, right? So every single chapter that I've wrote in my book has a struggle with a value and a perspective, or I should say the value and the struggle. And then at the end of every story, of every chapter, I inject what they call the naked truth. And that really is my undrug hazed, rational, responsible, accountable injection of my naked truth into my book that literally says, hey man, Mr. 30-year-old that's struggling with all these things, you might want to think about what you're doing here before you do it. Unfortunately, I can't do that because it's already passed, but for you, you might want to do that. That's my avatar. That's the guy I'm talking to saying, don't go on the Forrest Gump walk, dude.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and that's really what it breaks down to. So it's crazy, So my career spanned, like I said, everywhere. It was like nuts. So
it's been incredible. So Corey, remember how we were joking we were going to totally run past our time? It's almost 48 minutes now, right? This has been, I think we could just keep going, but I want to be respectful of your time, sir. So man, this has been a really great conversation, and I look forward to going back and watching this. There's been so many good gems brought out of it, and this was I am so grateful that you reached out to say, hey, want to do this? Yes. That was an easy yes.
Let me just inject just a little. Do you have a couple more minutes? I don't want to take.
We got a couple more, of course. Yeah,
a couple more minutes. Okay, I just want to, like I say, like let you guys know that really, to me, anyways, like another reason why this book's so important too is because the hook of the book, truthfully, is the entertainment aspect of it. A lot of people might think that I had all this confidence, and you look up at people sometimes. Myself, I do, where I see I see maybe a rock star, a movie star, somebody that I really admire their talent, and I go, oh wow, I would love to have spent just one day in that person's shoes, just to be able to feel what it was like to be on that stage or be that singer or whatever it might be. And we all assume that that's what it is. But you don't necessarily realize what it's like when the lights come down and that person is not necessarily feeling valued because he has a bazillion acquaintances and everybody wants a piece of him, but they don't really have any true, real, raw relationships that they can actually go and express themselves to and be vulnerable. That was kind of me at one point in my life. And as much as I was really, like I said, in that spotlight, in the MTV spotlight, working for the largest beach club in North America down in Florida. And I was in there in the mix with all these people and just had all this status. And I made this mistake of mistaking status for worth at one point. But I guess my point, what I'm trying to say here is that, sometimes when you look at somebody like that and you think they have it all together, they don't have it all together. Because sometimes they're just looking for that one person, and they're maybe even just trying to make a phone call in the middle of the night just to be able to actually speak to somebody that cares, because nobody else really around them does, And so for me with this book, the hook obviously is yeah, I want you to read from some of these stories, but where people, especially men, are going to realize that there's a lesson to be learned, and they're going to be able to relate to those things. And when it comes down to maybe that guy that's in that situation where he is by himself and maybe doesn't have somebody to talk to, maybe if he's actually reading some of that and understands that there's somebody else out there that struggled with the same damn thing, he might not be alone in that moment. Right. Yeah. So that's why I did this. It's more about that, right? Like, because we all say, we've all heard it, the Chester Benningtons of the world, the Michael Hutchinses of the world, that pass away, and you never know because they put a smile on their face and they present themselves as being totally happy and everything's great. Yeah, that might be the perception at that moment, but you know, even them, with all the fanfare that they had and everything else, they couldn't find someone. They really couldn't, to be able to help them, to be able to get away from that. And it ended up being their demise. And so we all say that, yeah, you know, reach out, and, you know, the coffee's on, talk to me, whatever you want to, and all the rest of that stuff. But sometimes it's hard for somebody to reach out. It's not easy for them to do that. So when somebody can actually read something that they can relate to, that's where my hope is. That's where I just kind of hope that somebody will get a hold of that book and it'll make that kind of an impact. So that's kind of what I wanted to say.
It's that first step to not feeling alone.
Yeah, because I was pretty alone, you know. I was pretty alone there for a little while. So, but yeah, it's good to be where I'm at now, and all I can say is that you know, life's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect, but I love myself a lot more now than the guy that I saw in the mirror 20 years ago with a lot better body. The guy with a better body, he might have had a few more things going on in his life, but man, I feel a lot more comfortable with the person I see in the mirror now. That's just what I want for anybody else, really.
I love that,
man. Yeah, I love that,
man. What a great convo. Before I let you go, we're going to hit the last question I ask everybody. So we're going to jump into my time machine, go back 10 years. Out of all these things, what's that one piece of advice you'd give Corey 10 years ago?
Man, don't sell yourself as something that you're not. Simple as that. Don't sell, but be bloody well aware of what you are.
Yeah.
You know, like that's just what I'm saying. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, don't sell yourself, but be aware of who you are. You know, and I'll just leave it at that, because you know, we all try to do it, and I don't care whether it's you're trying to do it for your social media account or you're trying to do it for your girlfriend or whatever. You know, be you and be imperfectly perfect, because none of us are perfect by any friggin' means. So yeah, that's mine.
Awesome, great place to end this on. Corey, thank you so much for being on the show today, and to everybody else who's watched, thanks for watching Peeled Back's LiveCast Conversation, episode 81. And we will see you all next. Oh, one more thing.
One more thing. I almost forgot, man, for your audience. Oh my God, I almost forgot to do this. I was going to offer your audience actually a 20% discount on my book if they wanted it. I can give them a code if you'd like. They go to my website. Yeah,
let's do it.
Okay, it's a PEAL code. All small letters, Peal code. And if they put that in at the checkout on my website at takeitoff.ca, they'll get a 20% discount on it.
So is it PEAL code or PEALED code?
No, just PEAL code.
All right.
Peal code. And that'll even for my course plans as well when they come out. They're coming out in the next couple of weeks in April. So even for the video courses and for the one-on-one training, they'll get a discount there as well.
Okay, we're just going to put that in the comments right now.
Didn't want to forget your audience there, man. I always want to make sure I
get it, everybody. Your audience What a great offer. Thank you so much, Corey.
Yeah, man. Right on.
All right, brother.
Absolute
Thank you very
pleasure,
much.
man.
And to everybody else, we'll see you next Wednesday.
Love it.